Hello, welcome back to Learn an FN Language. I'm Ryan Olke, and I'm going to learn Russian in 3 months as part of my new language challenge of learning a new language from scratch every 3 months. If you want to learn more about this challenge I'm undertaking to learn a new language every 3 months, check out my video on that. The link is below. And in today's video, I'm going to show you my exact plan for how I'm going to learn Russian, including the books I'm using, how I'm working with my teachers, what things I think will be really challenging up front, and what I'm really excited about. And throughout these entire 3 months, I'll be sharing with you my process, how it's going, how I'm progressing, how my methods are working out, what things I've changed and tweaked. And I will also be tracking all of my time and energy and effort so you know exactly what I did and how much time I spent doing it to be able to learn the Russian language. And so with that being said, let's dive into my plan for learning Russian in 3 months.
Okay.
So I'm really excited to learn the Russian language, as I've already mentioned in the announcement of this language learning challenge of learning a new language every 3 months. And again, my personal reasons for learning Russian is that, one, in the meditation community I'm a part of online, I'm a teacher in this community. It's called Buddhist Geeks. And in this community, we have a lot of Russian speakers in there. And they've been in some of my meditation groups. And so I'm really excited to be able to learn some Russian and to be able to hopefully have at least a little bit of conversation with these people who are a part of my community. And speaking of community, here in my city of Asheville, North Carolina, there actually is a significant Russian population here, enough so that the COVID vaccine sites have translations in Spanish and Russian. So only 3 languages, English, Spanish, and Russian. So I'm excited to connect with people who speak Russian here locally in my community. And to be honest, also in the media of the United States, my home country here, in TV shows and in movies, we have a lot of Russians and Russian culture featured in our movies. Now, it's often particularly in a biased way, or at least only showing part of the Russian culture with relationship to politics, and the politics of the United States. And so I'm really excited to dive in to the Russian culture, Russian people, Russian community beyond what's simply portrayed in our movies and television series, because honestly, a lot of that is presented in a negative light, and we don't get to see all of the beauty and wonderful things about our fellow Russian community members here in my own country of the United States, and also internationally and in Russia. So I'm very excited to learn the Russian language, because when you learn a language, you also learn culture and you get closer to the people who speak it. Okay, so now let's dive into my actual plan for studying the Russian language. So for Russian, I think I will spend at least 30 minutes every day studying on average. My hope is that I could actually reach about an hour every single day of study on average. So some days maybe I only study 30 minutes, and maybe another day I study an hour and a half and I have more time to dedicate. But in average, it works out to be, say, an hour or 45 minutes or whatever it might be. And one of the reasons why I feel comfortable and happy to set my minimum goal for 30 minutes every day is because if you watch this video and you see that on average I spent 30 minutes every day, you might feel more encouraged to pick up another language as well, to see that you actually can see real results, to be a user, a confident user of the language you're studying in only 30 minutes every day, okay? So if I did this language challenge and I studied 3 or 4 hours every day, you might say, well, of course he achieved really great results. He was able to spend 3 or 4 hours every single day, but I don't have 3 or 4 hours every single day. That's okay, because in this language challenge, I'm actually not going to be doing 3 or 4 hours every day of study. At minimum 30 minutes, maybe an hour every single day. And so I think for a lot of people who, if you're serious about learning a language, you probably can find 30 minutes in your day, whether that's broken up into 2 periods of 15 minutes each. That seems much more manageable. And so if I'm able to demonstrate that I'm able to develop a certain degree of fluency in only 30 minutes a day, well, then you can do that too. So now let's dive into all the resources and methods I'm going to be using to study the Russian language. First, I want to say that I have 0 experience with the Russian language. I have 0 experience with Slavic languages in general. So I am really starting from scratch. And that's important to note, because as I'm searching for resources, I really have no basis for knowing whether or not these resources are actually really good or not. So I did a lot of Googling for people who've studied the Russian language quite a lot. I read a lot of reviews online, and I think I picked out really popular, thorough resources to help me at least start learning the Russian language. And then maybe later, after experience, I might find new resources that I find more helpful, but I think these are gonna help me get started. Now, in terms of the books I'm using to study the Russian language, I think for any language, you need at least 2 books at minimum. One is a vocabulary book, and then 2 is a grammar book. You might have many more books than that, and obviously for enjoyment, you'll be reading probably some literature books or nonfiction books, things like that. But in terms of language learning focused books, at minimum you need a vocabulary book and a grammar book. So for vocabulary books, I have 2 different books that are interesting to me in different ways. One is a classic frequency dictionary, more or less. So this book here is the 2,000 most common words in the Russian language, with sentences for example, and this is from Lingo Mastery. So you'll hear me talk a lot about how important it is to study common vocabulary first, so that way you can more quickly arrive at being able to have conversations, okay? The other book I have for Russian vocabulary is this fun book. It's a bilingual dictionary for Russian and English language, and it has tons of pictures in it, and grouped into themes. So in addition to a frequency dictionary, I highly recommend a themed vocabulary book where you can see vocabulary in a particular theme, like shopping, whether the grocery store, going out with friends, or traveling, because that's also a really useful way to learn vocabulary, is to learn a set of vocabulary in a particular situation that you think you will commonly be in. And photos are always really, really good. Plus, if my stepdaughter is going to learn maybe a little bit of Russian with me, I think she's gonna think this book is super, super fun, and to see all the pictures that go with it. Now, in terms of the 2 grammar books that I'm going to be using, one is from Schaum's Outline, and I'm not sure if I'm totally pronouncing that correctly. These outline books are pretty darn popular in multiple languages and generally have really good reviews. It's quite thorough. You can see how thick it is. It covers all the grammar, and it's a little bit more focused on getting the essential rules and then having exercises for you to work through if you want to take that approach. Now, my approach to grammar is actually to read about the rules so I kind of understand that, and then to find example sentences that I can put into flashcards. I'm not really interested in going through grammar drills and doing completing this grammar book page by page. In general, that's not my approach. Maybe sometimes I'll do that with particular areas of grammar because I find it helpful, but in general, I need it as a reference. So the other book that was highly, highly recommended by advanced Russian speakers, advanced students of the Russian language, is this book here, and it's called A Comprehensive Russian Grammar. So this book seems incredibly, incredibly detailed. I think it might be a little tough to dive into first. I'm thinking the Schaum's Outline will be a little easier to dive into, but this was so incredibly highly recommended that I picked it up as well. And so part of my experiment will be to dive into both of these books and see which one is calling to me more, which one do I find easier to start learning as a beginner. An interesting thing I want to point out about these grammar books, which is an indicator of how difficult the Russian language is, for at least for English speakers, native English speakers, is that you can see how thick these books are. They're several hundred pages. And in both of the books, they do not talk about verbs until about page 230. So to put that in comparison, if you pick up a book on Spanish grammar for a native English speaker, you will see verbs talked about pretty much from chapter 1, if not chapter 1, really early in the book. We start talking about verbs in Spanish really, really early on. But these 2 grammar books right here do not mention verbs really or address them in any significant detail until about page 230. So that part is really intimidating, but it's also really exciting to take on such a big challenge compared to what I've been used to recently with Spanish. So something really important, I think, in every language is pronunciation, and especially with Russian, it's impossible from what I've gathered to not focus on pronunciation, because if you don't have a basic understanding of pronunciation, you will be mispronouncing words right and left, and the actual meaning of what you're saying will radically change. So you have to spend some time up front focused on pronunciation. Now, I've heard that while it looks intimidating up front, it's not actually that difficult that you can actually develop a basic understanding and ability to pronounce and hear Russian words, but it will take some effort. So my grammar books do include a good bit of information on how to pronounce the sounds of the Russian language. But for me, what I use is the pronunciation trainers from Fluent Forever, which you can buy on their shop. It's kind of hidden now because they have their own standalone Fluent Forever app that includes pronunciation training. But I have purchased and downloaded their Anki decks for the Russian language and their pronunciation training. So I'll be using that, which is going to be so much more useful because I'm just going to be using these flashcards that include the international phonetic alphabet symbols for the different sounds of the Russian language. And I'll be able to hear recordings of native speakers pronouncing those sounds and using those sounds in example words, and also what they call minimal pairings, where you have to identify the difference between, say, a sound from the English language that's not quite the sound in the Russian language, and be able to tell them apart, or to be able to tell very similar sounds in the Russian language and from each other and distinguish them a little bit more easily. So I have found those pronunciation trainers incredibly useful. I can develop a decent amount of pronunciation in a short period of time with that kind of pronunciation trainer. And so with the Anki application, I will be using that every single day to review pronunciation cards, to review vocabulary cards, and to review grammatical cards. So this is a core part of my daily learning process. Will be the Anki review sessions. I'm going to experiment with the standalone Fluent Forever app just to see how it is, but because it's limited only to the phone and because it lacks customization that I really like as a language learning nerd, I won't make that my primary app. Anki is my primary app for studying language, and so I will also use Anki for studying vocabulary cards as well. So I'll create my vocabulary cards in there. I'll create my sample grammatical sentences in there to help me learn the grammatical rules. So I'll use that for vocabulary, grammar study, and for pronunciation training. One great thing about Anki is that it includes a whole bunch of statistics. So with all my practice inside of Anki, I will track all that time and be able to share with you the wealth of information it has on how I've been studying and the progress I've been making and how much vocabulary I really know. In particular, vocabulary. You'll be able to see how that improves and increases over time, and I'll have stats to share with you to demonstrate that. I also use a time tracking app where I track all of my time engaged with language learning or using the language in any format whatsoever, whether it's formal study or informally listening to a podcast, or reading a book, or watching YouTube videos. I track everything. So I will be using that to track all of my time in the Russian language, and I'll share that with you throughout my process, and especially in the end to show you exactly how I spent my time. And last but not least, most importantly, I have 2 teachers on iTalki, native Russian speakers who live in Russia, who will be my teachers throughout these 3 months. One I will do an hour-long session with every Monday, and the other I will do a 30-minute session with on Friday. I will see over time if I increase the number of lessons I'm taking, but for right now I wanted to start with just these 2 lessons, so that way I could see how much time outside of those lessons I needed to really study and absorb the things I'm learning, so that way when I show up for my lessons, I have plenty of questions and confusions that they can help me with to clarify and to give me further direction. But in the end, maybe I will take an additional lesson every week, maybe 3 lessons a week, maybe 4. I think that'll be too many, to be honest. Because I think I'll need to spend a lot more time with my vocabulary, with the grammar books and pronunciation practice. And one cool side note is that one of my Russian teachers also speaks Spanish fluently. And this is really interesting because it dawned on me the other day that I could learn another language through a second language. And that way, sometimes I could be doubling my time of language learning. So if, for example, I want to watch a video on YouTube about the Russian language, I could watch it from an English-speaking YouTube channel, or I could go and find a Spanish-speaking YouTuber who is teaching on the Russian language, in which case I'll be hearing Spanish and Russian at the same time. So it's a 2-for-1 language learning process. So I'm really excited to work with this Russian teacher who also speaks Spanish. So there you have it. This is my plan as of right now on how I'm going to start learning the Russian language. And I fully expect my process to evolve, where I might add in additional pieces as the process moves along. I might tweak things, I might add things, I might remove things, who knows? We will see. But this, I think, is a really good plan to start on day one. So I'll be starting my Russian language learning process on May 1st, and I'm excited to show you how my first week goes. I'll be sure to record a video to show you how the whole week went, and I'll be sure to continue recording videos throughout my whole 3-month process. So I invite you to join me in this language learning process, whether for 30 days or for 3 months, whatever language is really interesting to you. If you happen to choose Russian as your language for this challenge, definitely let me know. I'll be excited to see how your process is going and what tips and methods and techniques and resources you're using. If you're already an advanced speaker of Russian, let me know what has been really helpful for you and what has been challenging and how you've dealt with those challenges. I'm excited to hear about your language learning process. So until next time, happy language learning and see you in the next video.